Joining me now with more, Fox News contributor and former chief speechwriter to President George W. Bush, Mark Thiessen, who just penned a Washington Post column on how Iraq is starting to play in the race for the White House. Mark, thank you for being here. The Washington Post out with an editorial tonight, an editorial now from the paper, calling this a stunning fall in Ramadi, saying it exposes President Obama's weak strategy, saying the U.S. lacks a strategy, and going on. This is the Washington Post to say there was hope that the president's half measures might be enough, but now even modest optimism is questionable. What does it tell you?
It tells you that we're talking about the wrong things. We spent the last week talking about what happened in Iraq 12 years ago, and while we were doing that, in the here and now, the terrorists were on the march in Iraq. They were marching through Anbar province. They took Ramadi over the weekend. They're on the outskirts of Baghdad, 80 miles away, commuting distance. Our strategy in Iraq is failing. Despite months of American bombing, the terrorists are on the offensive. This is an absolute unmitigated failure. And the American people, what the American people want to hear from their presidential candidates and from the President of the United States is, what are you going to do about it today? What are you going to do about Iraq today?
Well, I mean, as the person who asked Jeb Bush that question, I submit to you both are relevant because people also want to know what the philosophy is in terms of going to war. At what point is it worth it? So they're both relevant questions. But I want to ask you about what the Post outlined tonight in its editorial. They talk about how captives are now being slaughtered right now, that ISIS has seized U.S. military equipment, including 30 U.S. government vehicles that we gave them the day before. The day before, as we're saying, oh, this is a PR stunt, we're giving 30 vehicles that now are in the hands of ISIS. And the question is whether our government, the people running this war, have any idea what they're doing.
The commander-in-chief doesn't have any idea what he's doing. But I'll tell you something. The American people know what needs to be done. The American people want to send ground forces to Iraq right now to fight ISIS. There was a Quinnipiac poll in March that said 63% of Americans want to send ground forces to Iraq, including 73% of Republicans and 53% of Democrats. A majority of Democrats think we need ground forces. So there's absolute consensus among the American people, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, that we need ground forces. There's consensus in our military commanders that we need ground forces. The only one who doesn't seem to realize we can't win this without ground forces is the commander-in-chief.
Even the Washington Post tonight addressing that, saying President Obama refuses to send special forces and military assistance that could meet the threat there. Speaking of, he thinks everything is a commitment to a long-term war. So now we've lost Mosul, we've lost Ramadi, and we've opened up the pipeline from Syria to Baghdad. And at what point, Mark, is this president going to say, I can't run out the clock. I am going to have to deal with this before the next president comes in?
He has to deal with it, but he's not going to. He doesn't want to. And look, 12 years ago, we had flawed intelligence in Iraq. President Obama had accurate intelligence in Iraq. For a year, the intelligence community was telling him that ISIS was on the march, that they were going to invade Iraq, they were going to take Mosul, they were going to go and try and take Baghdad, and he dismissed them as JV terrorists. So, you know, the President of the United States is not listening to his intelligence community, he's not listening to his to the military commanders, and he's not listening to the American people.
They will be heard because people are being slaughtered at this moment, including women and children, civilians, and on it goes. Mark, it's good to see you.
Thanks, Megan.